All right, good evening, everybody. I'm Christina Bell, and we are here for our second to our last tour of faith for the month of July. And we have Colleen and Randy Smith with us. They are missionaries, and they have toured the U.S. in RV. I probably forgot to ask and just make sure that I was correct in that for many years. And they are here tonight to tell us about their stories about traveling in their RV, about being missionaries, about doing the work that they feel called to do. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to them so that you guys can introduce yourselves, and you can go ahead and share your screen and show us what you would like to show. And everybody usually here that's here normally knows if you guys have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat if you like to, and I'll read them and send them out to you as they come up. All right, so I'm going to mute myself and let you guys go ahead.
Okay.
You can keep talking on this.
Okay. Well, as my wife plays with the screen, I will go ahead and start talking. I'm Randy Smith, and this is my wife, Colleen. And like Christina said, we have been retired for 14 years now. And for 13 of those years, we did live in full-time RV'd around the country. The 30 years before that, we were actually in the Air Force, and we've kind of lived around the world. So traveling is kind of just in our blood, and we love to do that. We're members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and after being full-time on the road for a year or so, an opportunity came up to serve a mission, and we jumped on that. And it was literally the time of our life. And since then, we've served two more, had volunteered for a fourth one, but unfortunately, it was on an Indian reservation in California, and it was right at the beginning of COVID. And the reservation was shut down and we weren't able to do that. So sometime soon, we're hoping to do that again. I will tell you that we have thousands of friends from our Air Force career, as we did that for so long and we're so many different places. But there's two things about serving a mission with your spouse or when you're older is, number one, for me, that time that we've been able to spend together, my wife and I, on these missions and bonding together after careers and all the busyness of life, just is one of the greatest blessings we've ever had. Just those times that we were just the two of us. We were lots of other people, don't get me wrong, but it was really a bonding time and has made our marriage way, way stronger. Second part of that is, I said we've served in the Air Force with thousands upon thousands of people. And there's one or two that we may still keep in touch with. But the couples and individuals we have served with on our missions continue to this day to be some of our best friends, and we are in touch all the time. And so we have made some lifelong friends that we just hold very dear to our hearts. Some of them are on here tonight, and we thank them for being there. And that's just been a tremendous blessing. So as we go through this and answer questions in the end, just keep in mind that these are both sacred and very special things that we have been able to do in our lives, and we really, really enjoyed it. So without any further ado, I'll turn it over to my wife, and she's going to start talking about our missions. Can everybody see the slideshow that we've got up?
Yep, I can see it.
Okay.
One quick question. How long you were both in the Air Force?
Yes.
Very cool, because I know sometimes that's very hard to do, a dual family, both of you guys in the Air Force. You were for how long?
I was in the Air Force, actually in the Air Force for 30 years, a little over 30 years. My wife was civil service working for the Air Force for 26 of those years.
Wow, very cool. Okay, I just wanted to clarify, make sure I got it.
Okay.
So our very first mission that we were able to
Do me a favor, unmute yourself. I hit mute. I was trying to mute myself.
You just muted me. Thanks a lot.
I was trying to mute myself. I hit the wrong button.
So anyway, we were able to serve in the middle, I mean the middle of nowhere in Wyoming at Martin's Cove. And a little history of Martin's Cove was that it is area where the Mormon pioneers were crossing the plains and then were stuck by great winter storms there. So a lot of people come out to walk the trail and to commemorate the walking across the prairie with as a pioneer. We would have close to 60 to 75,000 youth come out in groups and walk the trails. And then we also had people that would stop by that were traveling. And then we had families that would come and do a trek. And the trail at Martin's Cove where we were was 9 miles. So they would do at least 9 miles in one day, if not more, because of where they would go. Now, hold on just a minute and I'll get this thing to move. This here's where we stayed as missionaries. It was called Missionary Village. And that's our camper there, and the view that we had of the prairie of nothing for a while. You'll see in the next few slides that we did have things to see. And then the other picture is the actual village where all the missionaries stayed. 52, our first year there, 52 couples were called to serve, to work the grounds at 3 different sites. So we became a very close community because we worked and played hard side by side every day. Oops, I can't do it that way. Okay. Oh, this is, you're talking about cooling off. This is them arriving in the spring with the snow that was still there, and then a snow that fell shortly after. So we would have our snow, and they even trekked in the snow, some of the groups. This is our neighbors that we had. As you can see, we did have different views from all kinds of antelope right outside our front doors. Additionally, the neighbors that we got to visit with, along with the missionaries and the trekkers, were these animals. That's wild horses in Wyoming up there.
Very pretty.
And this is some of the scenery that we saw. The sunsets were gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. Watching the weather come across the prairie was gorgeous. But now you got to remember, we were there commemorating pioneers. I am sure it was not so gorgeous for them because they didn't have a nice, cool, warm camper to crawl into when that storm came. In preparation for all the trekkers coming and to understand the stories of the pioneers so that we could share them with everyone that visited, we had several visitors come and teach us different parts of the story, from the actual director of Farmland Reserve, who we served under, to people that had actual pioneer heritage. And then the church history department came out and gave us a lesson also. On the right-hand side, you'll see the group of missionaries there. The church education system came out, and we went on a bus ride from as far in as Casper, Wyoming, all the way over to Rock Creek Hollow, and learned the highlight points of the trail while we were there. And stories were shared of different pioneers of crossing the river in Casper, and camping there in the Red Bluffs, and when the rescuers would show up and help them get into Martin's Cove where it was a little safer. And so those 2 pictures on the right show that. And then on the left, we had to do different vignettes of pioneers. Some of us would pick our own pioneers that we would want to tell stories about, because as you learn stories from the trekkers or the families that are coming, and just maybe something hard that they're having to go through, because we visited a long time, we could share stories of how a pioneer was strong and combated some of their difficulties on the trail, like losing a spouse or losing a child, or having to go ahead of your family without the rest of the family following for several years, if they could at all. So that vignette there was Ephraim Hanks and his wife Thisbe, who was much younger than he was, which was kind of an interesting story. This is us trekking. We actually went on the trek where we would walk with the youth groups and guide them through. So every pioneer, and right there's Carol riding. She's down there. And so every one of us walked that trail and crossed the river, which was chilly in the spring. I can imagine, and you'll see in a few minutes, crossing it in November when they did. We had to do cleanup of the area to prepare for all of our visitors that were going to show up, because throughout the year, there was close to 200,000 visitors. Now, the summer was the heavy time, but we still had guests and groups that would come out in the winter that wanted to trek during the snow and stuff. So that's us doing highway and area cleanup and our great treasure that we got to keep. We had to prepare the facilities. And so we did a lot of painting, a lot of planting, a lot of trimming bushes, a lot of repairing sewer lines and water lines. There was just everything you can think of that we need to do. Tree trim, cleaning. The biggest joke was when you went to the visitor center in the morning, how much bird poop was all over that you had to clean up. We had contests to see who had the most. And I'm trying to get it to go forward. It's stuck. Hold on, people. Let me see. Can you hit that one? Oh, I froze.
Our slideshow has frozen.
Hold on.
Okay,
We'll go.
so for us, it didn't. I can see skills gained, and I can see the John Deere.
Oh, okay.
I can see.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it didn't.
Well, but now you froze. Give it 1 second. Let's see if internet can catch up. Gotta love technology still. I was just gonna say those are impressive skills because I have not even tried any of those. Not driving one of those big trucks, because that is like a 7-speed. What that is, and then I'm not using that machinery either. I admire some of us women later in life that learned how to do this stuff because it's not easy. So there we go. I'm gonna see if they can get back in. I had a feeling they might pop out and then back in. All right, you guys should be back in. I can see you back in. There we go.
Okay, sorry, we don't know
There
what
we go.
happened.
That's okay, it happens.
But we can't screen share.
Oh, yep, hold on. I'll make you a co-host again. Okay, go ahead.
Hey,
So-
you got a chance to get your cup of joe for the day.
I know I was saying how I admire you because I've had to learn a lot of new skills moving out here to the country, but I don't aspire to have to learn how to drive one of those big tanker trucks.
Oh. Okay, now we'll.
Or really a backhoe, or I mean, we do have neighbors that have them here and they come over with their heavy machinery and they help do things. Our neighbor is in his 80s and he comes over with his stuff and he works it like it's part of his being.
Oh.
So, because he's been doing it for years, but
And these are the these are the particular 3 skills that I was proud of gaining,
Absolutely.
was being able to drive the tractor, and then the backhoe. We were putting in a water system, and then the water truck, because we had to water down the dancing area before they start dancing and causing a cloud of dust.
Yep.
So-
Yep. Very true.
And then the actual reason we were there, on top of everything, was to host visitors to the visitor center there that commemorated the pioneers, and also the family where the ranch was located currently before it was purchased by the church. And then school groups. We did school groups along with the trekkers that came. And this is just one group of trekkers. We would have 3 and 4 groups a day come through of, like I said, up to 200-300 kids, teenagers.
And normally they would be there multiple days. So they
Yeah.
actually camped out on campgrounds we had on site.
Okay.
And so they would show up on these buses from Utah, Idaho, California, Arizona,
Texas.
Washington, Texas, Kansas, all over the place. And they would show up on these buses, and these buses would come back and pick them up to sometimes the next day, but some of them would stay as much as 3 days. So
I was just going to ask, where did everybody stay? Because that's like you said, like sometimes 70,000 people or something, or
well,
30,000.
that was an entire year.
Yeah.
Okay, I was like,
That
this
was the entire summer of Trekker. that
We
had.
would have up to 1,500-1,600 youth there at one time.
Okay, well, that's still a lot. I mean, are they camping like or were there cabins that they camped in, or?
No, we'll show you that in just a minute. Some of
Okay.
the campgrounds.
I don't want to ask too much and get ahead of myself.
No, that's fine.
This is the trail, or part of the trail. I mean, you can't see the whole trail because it's 9 miles of it. But this is the trail, 2 pictures of them on the trail, the groups. And each group would have a colored flag or a type of flag so that we could identify where each group was, because we had people up on the hill in one of the little huts like you see there that we call base, and they would be able to see the whole trail and where everyone was along the trail, so that we didn't have backups at the same area. We would have one down at the river crossing, one over at Women's Pole, one going into the cove.
They were basically traffic control.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Exactly. And so that first place right there is one of the places they would stop on the trail. And that's where we would do a vignette and share a story, and then kind of keep them together and let them get a drink of water, rest a while, check their group to make sure there was no one lagging. Now, this is the very first one, so everyone was still excited. But by the last stop of the day, when they would start like at 8:30 and then they wouldn't get done till 3, they were pretty tired. Pretty tired. And so were we.
I can imagine.
This is part of your question about the campground, and this is just one of the campgrounds. We actually had 2 at our site. And they would hold 1,500-1,600 kids in their different groups in their tents at a time. They weren't always that full, but they could if we were, if
Right.
we had many people there. So they all brought their own food, everything they needed. They were self-contained except for the trekking and the vignettes and things we provided.
Wow, very cool.
And they had their own medical people
Yes.
with them also, along with adult leadership. So that was good. And then you can see that that's where we were doing the vignettes out at the campground for them, whichever ones they would request. We spent the winter scheduling these treks so that they would know what they were going to do each day and what we were needing to do.
Everything was scheduled a year out. So,
Which is a huge feat.
oh my
Yes.
gosh.
And then the evening for 8 to 10 couples each night, after a long, hard day on the trail with trekkers at their different stations or doing the maintenance for the day or whatever, we would end up square dancing with all the youth in the campgrounds. And that was an absolute blast, And just, we would call the dances and then dance with them, teach them 2 dances. And just kind of a side note, Brother Smith and I got honored to teach deaf teenagers how to square dance.
Very cool.
That was
Very
exciting,
interesting.
but they picked it up fast. They really did, and they really enjoyed it. So that was kind of cool to do that. Okay, I mentioned that we spent the winter there, and I just put these few pictures in of the winter so that you can kind of see what wonderful weather we had.
Wow.
That should cool you off, Christina, right there, because
That's what I-
the picture is of the inside of our little, what we called mule.
We called them rowers or UTVs,
Yeah.
side by sides.
And so we had them to get from our apartments down to the office or out to the barn or wherever we needed to be for the day. And that was the inside that we would crawl in and head off in the morning. Very,
Did
very,
that all work? Did it all work correctly?
yeah. Yeah.
Once they warm up.
I know plastics and metals don't do very well when they get, like frozen. They're not always the most the
They get a
easiest to
little
work.
stiff. It's a little
Yeah.
harder to shift or steer or whatever, but they would do
It
okay.
did good.
We were frozen, but they were okay.
And then the bottom picture is a picture of what the river looks like in the winter when the pioneers crossed. That is ice floating down and what they would have had to contend with.
Right, yeah.
We, when each year there was a big job that we call that was to be accomplished by all the missionaries that were serving and outside help also, which, because there's specific things that needed to be done by licensed people. And the first year, the big job was building that visitor center that you see up in the upper right-hand corner. We as missionaries built that building from ground up to what it is today.
Wow.
And so that was a big fun but frustrating
It
job.
was a lot of work. And it
And-
actually took right at 3 years to do it.
It did. It took a lot longer than what they had originally planned. And of course, us ladies that were there weren't able to do a lot of work on the actual construction. We do what we could, sweep up, cut boards, whatever we could do. But we spent the winter, of course, scheduling the trucks that were coming for the next year and then doing humanitarian, like the quilts. Oh, I gotta hurry up. The second big job was putting in a sewer system at the Martins Cove Visitor Center because it was too small for the amount of visitors that we had. So we,
I can imagine. It
Yeah.
would be too small.
so
This sewer system, just the supplies and modules and things was about $250,000. So
Wow.
no labor, that was just
right.
the materials and pods and modules to do it. So it was a very, very big project.
Very big project, yeah. Well, if that doesn't work well, then nothing works well. So
That's it.
And then the third year was remodeling one of the apartments that we stay at in the winter, because we don't stay in the RVs in the winter.
No.
They are not made for that. So we did stay in an apartment, and this is remodeling from what we did to the apartment.
yeah, I was going to ask about that because I know I've lived in an RV in Florida before. I've lived in a fifth wheel, like you guys had a fifth wheel, and it is built a little bit sturdier than a pull behind RV is. A little
Right.
bit more for like long-term use, but in that freezing cold condition, it is very tough to maintain heat.
Yes.
There are people that do it, but we're not any of those people.
Right. There are people that do it. I mean, and I know I have family that has done it up in Michigan, and they have done the boards around the bottom of it, the insulation boards, and they enclose the entire underneath so that, and there's what you can do, but the amount of propane that you'd probably go through to heat would be equal to like rent an apartment or something, because it sucks down a lot. You'd have to do the windows, you'd have to probably close all the windows, you'd have to do a lot to winterize it all.
So they just had little apartments, and then if we spent the winter, we stayed in the apartment the next summer until they kicked us out. whatever.
So we would have around 50 missionaries at our site during the summer.
50
during the-
couples.
50 couples. And then in the winter, we'd have
7 the
seven
first year and
couples.
then 5 the last 2 years.
Just to maintain, plan, and all those other things.
So
plow
we did
snow.
that. On November 4th, we do a commemoration of crossing the river where we as missionaries would trek down with a hand cart and actually cross the river. These pictures are the first year, which it wasn't that cold. The second year was like the picture I showed you earlier with the ice
Woohoo.
coming down, and that was cold. That was cold and freezing. And then we would walk with our wet shoes and wet clothes back to the center, which was about 2 miles. So we did a lot of community service while we were there, including participating in the chili cook-off, which our missionaries won. And then the humanitarian efforts in the middle of various things, and then quilts for the military was the last one. We did the Christmas activities. We went caroling to all the neighboring ranches and the little store that was down the road. And it took us 2 nights because the distance is not around the block. It was driving long and hard through the snow. So we did it. We made it, and we'd take them cookies and stuff. We served the Salvation Army, and then we put on a big Christmas party program for all the neighboring ranches and the people in Casper that helped us, in Rollins and Lander and Riverton. Those were the surrounding towns, for them to come and have a big meal and a big program of music and stuff. So that's pretty much the end. That's the picture of us pulling out and departing Missionary Village. And so the second mission, I'll let Randy tell you, because it was the hard work one.
This was an opportunity we had to serve in south of Miles City, Montana. We were called a couple of years after finishing up at Martin's Cove, and we were actually asked to head up this project to build an office complex with 2 apartments in the basement of this building for one of the ranches that the church owns up there. We weren't able to because of illnesses with our parents, but about halfway through that project, there were 4 couples assigned to this. We had some changes, things got a little easier for us in our life, and one of the other missionary couples, I think it was the wife, had some heart issues and things, had to go home. So they called us and we went up and finished. We're about there 2 months, I believe, 2 to 3 months. So this was what we consider a construction missionary, or excuse me, a construction mission. That's the building. These are the campsites that we had 4 campsites built there with full hookups. So that's where we lived, right beside that building out in the prairie in Montana. These are some of the work that we were doing: painting, floors, cabinetry, tile, you name it. We did it from ground up to the very end of it. I'll just flip through these really quick. The sisters got involved as well, because we got behind and we needed to get it finished before the snow came in. And so we were really, really hustling to get that finished. And every evening, when we get done for the day, we built a campfire ring beside our RVs, and we would cook and eat together. So that's what 3 of those pictures are. That's us sitting around the campfire in the evening. The one on the bottom left is us having like a little staff meeting. Every morning we would have a staff meeting about what we were going to try to accomplish that day and what the plan of the day was. One of the things we were able to enjoy there, we were very close to not an Indian reservation, but it was a really neat place there, way out in the middle of nowhere in Montana. But it was a school that serviced 3 different Indian tribes. And these kids would go to school there and live there while they were going to school. And they had a powwow every summer. And they invited a lot of people nearby to come. And this was a powwow we were able to attend. We ate with them. We watched them build teepees. It was a really crafts. It was a really neat day we had there. So there's missionary service, but there's also opportunities to see things you wouldn't normally see when you're out there doing those kind of things. One of the greatest things that happened to us there, and that's that picture on the left, the particular site we were on, the church employed these 2 young men, and the ones in the blue shirts, and they were from an Amish community nearby. And they would actually come over and stay in a small fifth wheel on site down the road from us with no electricity, per their faith and their customs. But they were down there, just these two boys, all week by them, working hard. And we started inviting them to come up and share dinner with us every night. And we got to know them really well. And it was really a treat to spend that time with those two young men. Bose was one's name, and I forget the other's name.
I don't remember.
Yeah,
He was from Missouri.
just a really neat opportunity to spend time with them. And at the end of that mission, we were there for 3 months, 2.5, 3 months. That's us pulling out from Trail Creek Land and Livestock, the Pumpkin Creek unit. And that was a really, really fun time we had up there, because we knew two of the other couples we had served with at Martin's Cove. So it was just a really good time. We had the opportunity, I tell you, to serve one additional mission, and we're gonna go kind of quick because we know we're running out of time here. So I'll let Colleen talk about this one.
Our third mission was in Cody, Wyoming. And in Cody, there is this church building that was built by the members. And when they built the building, they built what they wanted to be a bell tower. And it was pretty much nixed that it wouldn't work. The bell tower wouldn't work. So they had this big rotunda in the church building, and they didn't know what they were going to do with it. And an artist that had been staying in Cody on vacation, resting, solitude time, he was from New York, volunteered to paint a mural of the history of the church from the beginning until 1949 up in that rotunda. And so we were docents to share the story of the rotunda and the area where the church had been colonized. This is our new camper at the campground. And then the name was the Historic Cody Mural and Museum. You can hit it. We again had to prepare with different trainings, because we had a family history center in the museum area to help people with family search and genealogy work. So we had to learn how to man that and take care and go to the sites along with the stories of the area and the local pioneers for there. That's a picture of the rotunda looking up at the mural right on your right or left, and the right is a picture of the colonization of the area in the Cody area. One of my accomplishments there, I could say, is I had to climb a very tall ladder. And if you'll see the little pictures at the bottom, when we were doing some straightening up of some of the rooms in the museum area and the church building, we found 7 of the original pencil drawings of what the artist was going to paint. And so the directors had them framed, and they now are part of the display there, but they wanted the picture, the pencil drawing, by the actual part of the painting. So they volunteered me to climb the ladder way high
I was gonna say,
pictures up there.
of course you want
Take
this
the
picture.
Which the picture turns out really good. But what I found out was so cool, because when you get up there, the painting that you see in normal dimensions is distorted a little because of the way it curves up the wall.
Ah,
And when
very
you're
cool.
close to it, you see the actual distortion of the people's head this big and the bodies that big. So it was very interesting to do that, but scary. We also had an original Book of Mormon there on display, and we had to clean out the cabinet. So I got to hold the Book of Mormon and look through it a little bit, which was cool. And then in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see we had some very interesting visitors come see us every day in the afternoon.
That mom
Yeah.
had those 2 small spawns with dot spots still on them. It was really cool.
It was fun to watch them grow. Another picture of the mural there on the left, and then the right is the museum that we commemorated the settling of that area and the history of the Cody Bighorn area. We went on trips and saw things. We were right outside Yellowstone. So of course we went to Yellowstone a lot, and then up into Montana and over into the Bighorn Mountains. We participated in the Cody Nightly Rodeo several nights and the 4th of July parade and events. But our biggest highlight of that one was we were right there in the middle of the prairie for the solar eclipse in 2017. And that was really, really cool to be able to be there with no city lights, no car lights, nothing.
Yeah,
And
I'm
just
sure that was nice.
That
thing
was
go through.
really cool.
It was definitely a miracle to do and see for us. So,
Okay.
go ahead.
So that's a quick synopsis of what we've been able to do through our church. But then we were thinking about, okay, what is available for people not of our faith? And so we just did a quick Google search, typing in something to the effect of missions available in an RV, something to that effect. And well, I got skipped, didn't I? The first slide she showed was other opportunities in our church to serve missions with an RV. And I'm sorry I skipped over that, but we can go back to that. But here, just a quick search, and this is just a small sampling of the many opportunities that are out there.
And I want to just interject here. With our travels for 14 years along the road, we have met people that have done some of these things. And so it's a very active groups to be able to do this. If you own an RV in it, you don't have to do it for 3 years like we did our first one and 6 months for the other two. You can do it for just a couple weeks. If you've got the skill and they need your help, you can take your RV and go out and do Habitat for Humanity for 2 weeks and help do plumbing if you need to.
So there's just a few of the sites that we ran into. There are some sites, I think it was Campers on a Mission, if I'm not mistaken. They had sites for different denominations, for different states like North Carolina, Georgia, Florida, all had a state site that if you were in that state and wanted to serve a short mission, helping people in a camp or whatever it was, there's just tons of opportunities out there. So we wanted to share that with you as well. We're going to kind of shut down now because we've run over time. And Christina, if there were questions that we can try to answer.
Yeah, so one of the questions I actually have is I'm probably quite different. Well, I probably am anyway, but I've always thought sometimes, like even where I live here in the foothills, like what it must have been like for those back in the pioneer days to travel across, this country. My kids will complain if they have to walk from one side of the property to the other, and it's a little bit of an incline or hill. And I'm always like, you didn't, travel the country. Like back in the day, people traveled. So the camp, the first one that you saw, is that open to anybody?
Yes.
I guess wants to do that and then experience that pioneer experience, because I find it really very fascinating and very cool that is still available and open to people to be able to experience.
Yes,
because I've been to
opened it up for the visitors the 1st of May.
Right.
And shut it down usually around the end of September. I mean, there's not as much activity, but the 1st of May we opened up. We arrive in April and work real hard for that month and train. And then 1st of May, we start getting guests.
Because that site is on what we, for our purposes, call the Mormon Trail, but it was also the California Trail and the Oregon Trail. They were all one trail. So
Gotcha.
We commemorate our church pioneers going through there. Is the ruts are still there from the wagons and the hand carts. It's very historical. It's open to anybody who wants to come there. They can pull a hand cart or walk it or however they want to do it. It's really a neat experience.
Very neat. Yeah, no, I was just thinking that's, I've been to the Grand Canyon, right? And I was like, imagine you're coming along on your wagon and here you are and you're trying to go this way, and all of a sudden, boom, there's this huge canyon. Because I was there when you just kind of like walk right up to this, this huge canyon.
Edge.
So, and I just had family that just took their RV and they went for 30 days and they did Bighorn and they did Yellowstone and all that stuff. They saw all of that stuff when they were out in that area and the Grand Canyon. They just did like this whole around the country thing with a couple of people in an RV group. And it was very interesting to see it, but it would be neat to experience what it's like. Cheryl, you give me ideas like, oh, I should create a group. We should do next year. We should first of all, next year, if the temple in Columbia is done, which it might not be because it might be a year and a half, right? I'm just going like at some point we're close enough here that Charlotte, we're close enough here that while it's open, we could like all do a little trip up there as part of the tour of faith. Would be kind of a neat thing to do, And now I'm going like, now I'm wondering like, I wonder if I could do a youth group trip, start with the bus here, pick up, 20 youth here, head a little bit more towards Wyoming. I'm thinking Wyoming, how far is that? How many hours would it take?
About 2,000 miles.
That's it. That's it.
They know.
We'd help you.
Yeah, I'm going, oh, that would be kind of neat because I always get fascinated sometimes with the pioneer, with the fact that that's how we've spread across the country for the most part. Like, back in the day, like it was just you get in your wagon and go, and I know based on the fact that I garden and I have chickens and we'd all die if we had to be self-reliant because what I can produce over here would not be enough to feed us all. Even just my 5. So I just get fascinated how they figured out how to do things and how to survive. So
They did.
all right, so questions. Anybody else have questions? I don't know if you had a question, Cheryl.
I was wondering if you had the grocery store nearby. I didn't see much civilization.
Well, where we were at Martin's Cove to Casper, Wyoming was the nearest large town. And that's about 50,000 people. That's large in Wyoming. That was about 65 miles.
Wow.
You could go down to Rollins, which was a 12 miles closer. But back then, there was what we called a city market, which was a small grocery store. In the South, we probably relate that to a small Piggly Wiggly.
Right.
It was pretty expensive because it was the only deal in town. There was a hardware store and a few restaurants. It's right on Interstate 80, so it kind of catered to those folks. So we would occasionally go down there, but in recent years they have built a small Walmart there that's kind of, would make it more appealing to go down there to buy your groceries and things like that. But mainly it was into Casper, about 65 miles. And other than fence posts and cows, there wasn't much between the two.
I'm sure like the nearest gas station is probably.
Actually, we had a small, if you ever get bored and want to look up Muddy Gap, Wyoming, it's a crossroads. It's not a crossroads, but where 2 highways meet. And there is a small gas station there, and we know the owners, and they have a little bit of food and stuff in there. But if you want to, you're going to pay about $1.50 more per gallon than you can get in Rollins or Casper for gas. So you only get gas there if you have to have it to get to the next stop.
Yeah, very cool. I mean, I know what it's like living in the country in Georgia. Sometimes I have to make sure I have gas. I could be headed down to Athens, and depending on the direction I go, I might completely miss any gas station.
Right.
So I know how it is. And having to plan kind of sometimes to make sure I have fuel for stuff, because.
And when we would take our P day and go in to go grocery
Preparation
shopping,
day. It was our day off.
preparation was the day off where you went to Casper and got your things done that you needed done.
Right.
We would always ask around, okay, do you guys need anything? And, pick up their groceries, say they ran out of milk, or we were having a dinner and they needed something specific for their recipe. We would pick it up and bring it in. And even we would haul fuel because we all had fuel cans. So if we needed a couple more gallons to make sure we got into town, we'd send our fuel can, pick up fuel.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine. I mean, it takes some of that working together. It takes a village, right? It takes working together to do some of the.
Because one of the things that we didn't mention on that first mission is Missionary Village, where all the campsites were. It was our private campground. Was actually 10 miles from where we served. So we drove 20 miles round trip
Every day.
to get to where our assignments were. So 20 miles round trip for 5-6 days. And then 65 miles back from
Yeah,
Casper
wow.
back to, that's 130 miles.
Right.
Then 20 miles a day, that can be another 100 miles. So now you're talking about 230, 250 miles, and you haven't done any sightseeing, you haven't done anything. You just went back and forth to your assignments and to Casper and back.
Right. So it's all conserving and planning and kind of just knowing where you're at. Like I was going to say, even knowing what food you're going to have and conserving, like planning stuff out sometimes, because I know for me, it's 20 minutes to drive into town to go get something and forget it. So we just try to learn to substitute.
Right.
Like you have some cans of evaporated milk that kind of come in handy if you're baking something or something that's cooking and that you're not using fresh milk, or, you learn to make some little adjustments.
Right. And we bartered back and forth because you said you lived in a fifth wheel, and most people here probably have an RV if they're watching this. RV refrigerators are not as large as what our home refrigerators are. So that could present a problem in itself.
Uh-huh.
A lot of refrigerated or frozen food. Now we
Right.
did in one of our buildings, we had some large commercial refrigerators and freezers, and we all had a little space in there. We could put extra items if we needed to. That came in.
Right.
handy.
Yeah, because I will say if you haven't lived in an RV, the RV fridges and freezers are pretty small. So
Yeah.
What was the worst weather you had to live through out there?
The worst.
You have a blizzard or anything scary?
There were some thunderstorms. I mean, here in the South, we get accustomed to our thunderstorms. I grew up down here. My wife grew up in Wyoming. I would say some of the thunderstorms.
We would have campers that would be on the trail, trekkers that would be on the trail, and the thunderstorms would come up and their tents would rise out of the ground and blow over the river.
Pull up the stakes and just,
We had
just
one group that
toss
lost
through the
like
air.
5 tents, and we found parts and pieces of it, but we didn't find the whole thing. So those thunderstorms with the wind in Wyoming, because the wind's bad there. It is. You
Yeah,
learn
well-
to walk at an angle in Wyoming.
yeah, I mean, I was thinking that there's no trees, right? It's all prairie land. So that wind
Pretty much.
whips
Yeah.
through.
Cheryl, to answer your question, I guess thinking back on it, one winter, actually it was early in the spring. We were actually called as the assistant director, so we had some extra responsibilities, and I was in charge of facilities. So 2 of our sites were 56 miles apart, and we had 2 missionaries couples over there for the winter. And so myself and another individual had gone over there one day to take care of a fire suppression alarm that had gone off. He was our electrician, and I kind of have that background as well. So we went over there to take care of that, and we started heading back. And in Wyoming, in the wintertime, when they close a road because of bad weather, they just put these huge steel arms down across the road. So we started heading back, and there's this place called Jefferson City. And if you
Jeffrey
ever-
City.
Jeffrey City. If you ever heard the song, what is it now? Home on the Range.
Yeah.
This is what that song originated in this little town, and it was established who knows how long ago, and it really kind of boomed when the uranium mining was big, but now there's nothing there, nothing. And we were coming into this town headed home, and these barricades were down. So we called the highway patrol, and they said, nope, the roads are closed. There was no snow on the road. It wasn't where we were, it was in another location, but we were stranded for a couple of days. We couldn't go home because of that. That was probably the worst that we experienced. I mean, there was a lot of snow, a lot of wind. But
Is there
by the
like a
time it came-
hotel to stay in? There's nothing there. Is there some place to stay when you're being stranded, or are you just?
He
in
just
that little
went back
town, we
to the
just
other
went back
side.
to the other site.
Oh, right,
Go
right.
back where we
Stayed in
we
one
had
of the
accommodations
buildings.
there, and
Yeah.
but not being able to get home was, that wasn't much fun. And but yeah, there's a lot of snow, a lot of wind, a lot of cold, but you just get used to it.
How was your cell phone service?
We have Verizon,
Are you there yet? Do you hear me? Can you hear me?
and that area,
That's so good.
that whole Sweetwater Valley, Verizon does not touch. At least it didn't the last time we were there a couple of years ago. In fact, AT&T did work, but it wasn't their towers. It's a local company out of there in Wyoming. So we actually had to go buy, we actually put our Verizon service on hold, just kind of put it asleep or on vacation. And we went and bought a cheap phone from this local company and paid a lot of money per month just so we could have one phone, just to talk to our kids, to talk to family, that sort of things.
Now, you mentioned that song. Did you see Buffalo Roam?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't see pictures of Buffalo.
Okay, so Melinda had asked, did you have a personal car in addition to the RV?
We had our truck that pulled our fifth wheel.
Right.
But nothing else. Now, some
Right.
people did come with two vehicles. They bring the vehicle that pulled the camper, and the other person would drive a second vehicle, a smaller vehicle, so it was less gas.
Right,
more
because
So,
usually you need a heavier duty vehicle, a 1500 or 2500 that can pull a RV. And a fifth wheel goes up and up and up, and it has a hitch, a fifth wheel hitch that goes in the bed of the truck.
Right.
that connects to and pulls. Then there's other ones that just have the hitch in the back bumper of the truck, and that's just a pull behind. And those can be smaller and they're a little bit more lightweight, but fifth wheels are heavier.
yes.
And you have to have a vehicle. So that vehicle, if you're driving that all over, that does use a lot more fuel.
Right. Now, on our daily duties on site doing our missionary service, we had vehicles to drive for that.
I was gonna say you had like the side by side or something too,
We
right?
had the side by sides, we had pickups, we had,
For getting to the sites for maintenance and stuff.
Right.
for
The ranch had vehicles.
one of our
Right.
jobs was budgeting and buying all the materials. So we actually had to go into Casper quite often. And we had a church truck for that. We drove that all over. We did not drive it back and forth to our camper, but we drove it for all of our official duties, so to speak.
So all of you that were commissioned or to go to some of these different missions, do you have previous experience in some of these fields of work? Like, I don't know what you did in the Air Force. Like, I mean, did you do building or like management of like general contracting or stuff like that?
No,
So, I
nothing-
mean, you all just
nothing
kind
like
of,
that. I grew up on a farm. And
oh, so
and
you grew
Colleen-
up knowing we have to make anything out of nothing. What?
And
No.
Colleen grew up on a ranch. But that's in any faith-based community, the Lord provides. And it was really interesting because we did all of the maintenance out there. There was no outside maintenance. We maintained everything
Right.
from roads to buildings to air
Weeds.
conditioning to every sewer systems. You saw that. We always seemed to have people with the skills needed to take care of whatever we had, whatever was going on.
Well, I was thinking that YouTube is probably not that quick out there just because of service
Internet
is not quick.
service,
Like,
Get YouTube.
What was less than the cell service was Wi-Fi. It was,
Yeah.
was,
I was gonna say, like, at least here I can YouTube how to do stuff.
it was almost non-existent.
Right.
Yeah, so it
We'd
was,
go into town and sit at Burger King and hurry up and do our research that we needed for the next project.
it was
Research, download it to the phone. Okay,
for
screenshot
us, it
this
was
all.
30 months of being off grid, basically. We had electricity and plumbing, but as far as being plugged into the world, we really weren't.
Right, which is
Nice.
actually kind of nice.
It was
Yeah.
very,
In the day.
Yep. Yep. All right, does anybody else have any questions or comments? And I have about 8:05, so I don't want to take up too much time.
Yeah, you're
Figured-
cutting into our peach ice cream. Just kidding.
And now, so how drastic is it? Now you're only 2 minutes from a Buc-ee's. I mean, you have everything at your fingertips. Everything is in your fingertips. I mean, you know, like you can go from nothing to no service, no anything to within 2 minutes, you can have all your needs met.
2 miles in the other direction is a Dairy Queen. They're having a big special today where they donate all the proceeds to some of the local needy charities. So we are going down there to get us a Blizzard so that money will go towards these charities.
Awesome.
Good excuse. Good excuse. I like it.
Don't need one,
Awesome.
but it sounds pretty good, doesn't it?
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you guys. We appreciate you sharing your story and being on here and taking time out. Teresa, did you have any questions?
No, I don't. Thank
Okay.
you. Very nice
Barbara,
Thank you. Keep California safe for us.
Yes, I will.
Barbara, I know you can't put anything in the chat, so I just figured I'd give you a second to see, did you have any questions?
No questions, but this has been great. I've really enjoyed watching, seeing what you did. Because my son and daughter-in-law are currently RVing for a couple of years. And they're just having wonderful experiences. And I know you two did also. So thank you.
Well, you're
Thank you
welcome.
for-
Thank you.
For being-
I RV'd, I was stationary, but I did live in an RV for when I was 21, 22, 23. And one of them was living in an RV park, which was kind of neat because it was also a campground. And they had a community hall and they had washers and dryers and showers. You know, so it was just neat that sometimes on the weekends you'd wake up and you'd go outside to go walk your dog and there's like a family camping next to in a tent. Or there's, you know, like a section like you can walk around the campground and you can meet people from all over. And it really is a fun way to experience life.
It is. And
And meet people.
when we started
Yeah.
doing, basically 15 years ago, there were a lot of people our retirement age kind of doing it,
Right.
quite a few. But by the time we ended it, there were like, from what I read, there were like 1.5 million people living in RVs in the United States. That's a lot. But what really amazed us over the years were the more families we saw raising, or both parents working on the road remotely in most cases, and raising their kids, homeschooling in RVs was just really amazing to see how many were doing that and loving it.
Yeah. Actually, the next county over from where I live, they just made it illegal to live in your RV. And I thought that is not cool at all, because for some people, that's what they have.
That's
Yes.
what they can afford.
That's what they can afford, because people can't afford a whole heck of a lot at the moment. And you know what, if you can, I'm trying to get my daughter, my 20-year-old, because my mother has an RV on our property. She has a 35-foot long pull behind with a slide out on our property. So when she comes up and she stays in that when she comes to visit. And I'm trying to tell my oldest, it's 20, that you should take your money and buy another RV and put it on the other side of the property, because then at least you own it, and then at least you can live independently and you can live on your own some independently. Yes, this is the voice you hear bothering me in the background. Hold on. So I'm trying to, we just rescued some birds today, some little tiny birds. So that's what he's fussing about. Yes, no, we're not keeping them. We're going to go try to put them where they came from.
We're gonna go give them back to their mama.
In a makeshift nest. We're going to do our due diligence to help these little birdies.
No,
So,
their nest got broken.
So I will see you all again. Somebody else see you on Sunday at
Thank
3,
you.
I think.
That was so
thank you.
fascinating. I appreciated
Thank you.
that.
I appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.